Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at chapter 13 from book 3 of Eutropius' account of Hannibal in the Second Punic War. So just a quick refresher of where we are. At this point, we've been talking about how the Carthaginians are still in Italy, right? Hannibal is still threatening Rome from southern Italy, and he started to flip a lot of Italian allied towns, towns that were allied with Rome. He's starting to flip them to the Carthaginian side. But we said in the last few chapters that Rome has responded by sending their army under the Scipios to Spain, where they're actually doing pretty well. So the theater of war is expanding, and we're starting to get battles in different places, right? So Hannibal is in Italy, and the Scipios, right, namely Publius Cornelius Scipio, is in Spain, right, fighting against Hannibal's brother Hannibal. And the last thing we saw in chapter 12 was how the Macedonians entered the story now, the First Macedonian War. So King Philip of Macedon is looking at this situation and he's realizing, hey, I can ally myself with Carthage, and together we can sort of take out the Romans, who were a competitor in the region to Macedon. And the idea was if the Macedonians under Philip would help Hannibal and the Carthaginians in Italy to defeat the Romans, then the Carthaginians would turn around and help Philip in Greece, right? So it's sort of like a scenario we said of, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's what's happening here. So basically, the fighting is starting to expand and break out into a bunch of different theaters of war. And we're going to see how the Romans handle all that as we go. Okay? So this section starts with ita uno tempore quatuor locis pugnabatur. In Italia contra Hannibalem, in Hispanis contra fratrum eos Hasdrubalem, in Macedonia contra Philippum, in Sardinia contra Sardos et alterum Hasdrubalem Carthaginiensem. So it's a very long sentence, but if you take it one piece at a time, you'll see it's actually kind of simple to follow along. So you have and so, right? Ita, thus, or and so, however you want to translate it. Uno tempore here is ablative. So in this time, you could say. And you have quatuor loci, so in 4 places. Pugnabatur is really sort of impersonal. It was being fought, meaning the war was being fought in 4 places. And this is where Eutropius is about to kind of zoom out and show you the different theaters of the war at this point. So he says in Italia, so in Italy, against Hannibal, contra Hannibalem. This is the part of the story we've been following, right? Hannibal is in Italy. That's theater of war number 1. Then you have in Hispanis contra fratrum eos Hasdrubalem. So in Spain, and remember, by the way, Hispanis, I don't know if we mentioned this before, it's always plural because in the time Eutropius is writing, there's 2 Spains, a sort of nearer and further Spain. So there's 2 different Roman provinces there. So he's using sort of a more contemporary term to describe the past. So in other words, at the time he's writing, there were 2 Spains, which is why this literally says in the Spains, plural, right? But at the time of the Second Punic War, Hispania, Spain, doesn't belong to the Romans, so there really aren't any provinces there. So it's just an interesting side note where you can see Eutropius using language from his own time to describe something in the past, right? That's why you have in Hispaniis, which is technically ablative plural. But you can just translate it as Spain, right? Hispania. So in Spain, it's being fought, right? Pugnabatur is sort of implied here, against his brother, Fratrum Eus, his brother Hasdrubal, right? We've seen him before. So Hasdrubal is leading the Carthaginian forces in Spain. That's Hannibal's brother. Then you have in Macedonia, right? In Macedon, this was the new front, contra Philippum, against Philip, right? The king of Macedon. Now they have to fight there. Remember, they had sent an army over to Macedon to fight. So in Macedon against Philip, and in Sardinia contra Sardos. So in Sardinia against the Sardinians, the Sardos, right? And the other Alterum, the other Hasdrubal, right? The Alterum Hasdrubalem, it's the other Carthaginian Hasdrubal. So there's another another Carthaginian general who's fighting in Sardinia, who happens to be named Hasdrubal. This is not Hannibal's brother. It's a different person. So here we've had 4 different areas mentioned. So if you think of this map and where they're fighting, these are the 4 different places that they're now engaged in the war. So you have Spain, right, over to the left, the west. That's where you have Hasdrubal, Hannibal's brother, against the Scipios. They're fighting in Spain. Sardinia is the island that the Carthaginians and Hannibal had sort of riled up to rebel against the Romans. This is really important because Sardinia has a pretty decent grain supply, right? So, and if you look on this map, the island of Sardinia is very close to Rome. If the Carthaginians were to take this island, it would be a pretty convenient launching point to send ships over to Italy, right, and attack Rome. So this is an important area that, had rebelled, and the Romans had sent an army to quell it, right? It's important they get that down. Then you have Italy. That's where Hannibal is. And you can see on this map, part of Italy is blue. That's showing the towns that Hannibal has flipped in southern Italy specifically. So Hannibal is still in southern Italy. And then over to the east, right, on the far right of the map, we have Macedon. This is where King Philip has declared war on the Romans, and it's the fourth sort of theater of war here. So the war has now broken out all over the place, right? And you see that the Romans are trying to put down fires in a bunch of different locations. So then we continue with the narrative. You have Is Titus Manlio or Tito Manlio, proconsule, qui ad Sardiniam missus fuerat, vivus est captus, ocisa duodecimilia capti cum eo mille quingenti, et a Romani Sardinia subacta. Okay, so he, meaning that Hasdrubal, not the brother of Hannibal, the Hasdrubal in Sardinia, right? That's the last person we reference. So saying he, and it's you have to go down to captus est, right? So vivus captus est. He was captured. It's perfect tense passive voice. So he was captured by who? The ablative of agent. It's by Titus Manlius, right? You have ati Manlio proconsule. So by Titus Manlius, the proconsul, right? This is who they had sent to Sardinia, which is exactly what Eutropius says. It's Titus Manlius, the proconsul, who, qui, here's sort of your relative clause, your side note, who had been, pluperfect, passive voice, missus fuerat, who had been sent to Sardinia, meaning he had been sent before he captured, before Hasdrubal was captured. So if you follow the tenses here, captus est is perfect, which is why we push missus fuerat back to pluperfect. It's trying to say it happened before. Okay, so the first step is Sardinia gets taken care of, right? Titus Manlius kind of stops this other Hasdrubal and stops the rebellion happening in Sardinia. Okay, and he captured him vivus, so living, meaning alive. So he doesn't kill Hasdrubal, he takes him alive. But then you have ocisa, and you have to imply sunt, right? Because the real subject here is duodecimilia, so 12,000, meaning soldiers or people. Ocisa is really ocisa sunt. They were killed, right? Perfect tense, passive voice. So in Sardinia, 12,000 were killed. And with him, cum eo, meaning with this other Hasdrubal, mille quingenti, 1,500. So 1,500 capti sunt. They were captured. So the idea here is that Titus Manlius goes to Sardinia. He kills 12,000, right, of the soldiers, the enemy, and he captures 1,500, including Hasdrubal, right? That's why he's described as being taken vivus, alive, and it's also why you have this cum eo there with him, okay? Then you have Sardinia, right, which is where we are. And so you might say Sardinia subacta est. It was subjugated. Again, you have to imply est. It's just perfect tense, passive voice. It was subjugated by the Romans. There's your ablative of agent. Okay, so this section is all focused on Sardinia and Titus Manlius, the proconsul they sent. He goes into Sardinia and he does really well. So if we come back to our map, right, of where they're fighting, Sardinia is now the green check mark. They've taken care of Sardinia, which was sneakily important, right? It doesn't really get a lot in the narrative. I know Hannibal and Spain and Hasdrubal, these are kind of bigger areas, but it was important for them to take Sardinia. So Sardinia is secured, right? So that's step one. Then we keep going with the other areas. And you have Manlius Victor captivus et Hasdrubalem Romam reportavit. Interea etiam Philippus a Laevino in Macedonia vincitur, et in Hispania ab Scipionibus Hasdrubal et Mago tertius frater Hannibalis. Okay, so there's two sentences here. The first one is kind of continuing the story of Sardinia, right? You have Manlius, that's Titus Manlius, the proconsul. So Manlius, the victor, right? He reportavit, he brought back the captives, captivos, there's your direct object, and Hasdrubal, right? And that other Hasdrubal. Then you have Romam, it's the accusative of place to where, right? It's showing motion toward, and you have the name of a city, Rome, so you don't need a preposition here. So it's saying he brought them back to Rome, right? So he kind of drags all the captives, he drags this enemy general, and there's a big celebration in Rome, right? Because he took over or took back Sardinia. Then you have meanwhile, right? So in the other areas, you have Philip, right? He also, Winkator, he is conquered or was conquered. It's sort of got that historical present to it. But Winkator is technically present tense passive voice. So he is conquered. Etiam, he's also conquered in Macedon, in Macedonia, by Liwenus, right? Liweno is your ablative of agent. That Liwenus is the Roman general that they had sent to Macedon, right? We mentioned him in the previous chapter. So he takes care of Philip. And in Spain, in Hispania, right, Hasdrubal at Mago. So you have Hasdrubal, this is the brother of Hannibal, and Mago, who's described as the tertius frater Hannibalis, the third brother of Hannibal, meaning this is like another brother, right? So there's two brothers there in Spain, Hasdrubal and Mago. The two of them, Vincuntur, you have to imply, they were conquered. In Spain, ab Scipionibus. So there's your ablative of agent, by the Scipios. Remember, there's the two Scipios really leading the charge there. Okay? So this is sort of a classic Eutropius section where he's covering a lot of history and a lot of important stuff in one line, basically, right? So he tells you what happened in Sardinia, and then it's sort of, oh, by the way, they won in Macedon and they won in Spain. He's not giving you a lot of detail of really what happened. He's just telling you that the Romans won. Right? So if we zoom back out again to where they're fighting, now you have Sardinia is good. Spain is not fully conquered yet. I gave it a check mark here just so you can understand that they're winning, but it's definitely not conquered by the Romans yet, but they're doing really well in Spain. And Philip has been put down in Macedon, right? So they're doing well against the Macedonians, and they've kind of cleared out that area. So now if you think about it, the one major area that they still have is Hannibal in southern Italy. The second one that's still important that they haven't figured out yet is Spain. Okay. But in general, they're doing really well in 3 out of the 4 theaters of war, right? Which is good. And it kind of plays into Eutropius's narrative of how the Romans can overcome all odds, right? He laid out what a disaster it was after Cannae. Now he's laid out, there's sort of fires spreading all over the place. There's uprisings in Sardinia. You have the brothers in Spain. You have Philip in Macedon. Like, what are the Romans going to do? And now he's showing you, like, oh, don't worry about it, right? We took care of Sardinia. We took care of Macedon. We're doing well in Spain. It's all playing into his narrative that the Romans can sort of overcome any obstacle. Okay, so this is a shorter chapter, not a ton happening in terms of grammar. It's pretty straightforward. So hopefully that made some sense to you. Again, you want to always preface your reading by doing the vocab. If there's any grammar parts that you're not sure of, feel free to put them in the comments below. I'll help you with the translation, or you can look them up as you go. But you always want to keep up with the culture, the history of this too. So as you're reading, and you're seeing these events, dive in and look up, what's going on. How did the battle go against, Sardinia, right? How did Titus Manlius win over there? What was happening in Macedon? There's a ton of details that Eutropius is skipping because he's keeping this very brief, right? But there's a lot of good history there you can look up on your own too. And I encourage you to do so. But again, like I said, hopefully this wasn't too bad. If you need anything, let me know. But otherwise, just keep at it. And, hopefully you're feeling more and more confident with every chapter we do. Good luck.